Right, from the Retina 3S service manual, it has the distance here. The lens seat parallel to the film plane and 1.874 inches plus or minus a thou from it. Now 1.874 inches is 47.6 millimetres. Now almost certainly it was 47.6 millimetres was the specified distance, and the inch measurement we're given there was just for the benefit of the American market. So I've got my base on my calipers and I'm going to check and see what we've got. I'll try in the centre to start off with, making sure I'm holding this square with the mount. .49. I'll try in this corner. .49. I'll try in this corner. .4750 over here, 4751, and over here 4749. So in each case the distance is too small, not by much. I'll just rotate these screws about 1/8 of a turn, unscrewing them, which should increase our distance, and we'll check again. Again, I'll try in the middle first. .4751. Try on this edge. 4751. .475. Let's try it again. 4751. .475.2. Right, so more. Let's give it a quarter turn. In the middle, 4758. In this corner, 4758. In this corner, 4758. This corner, 4756. This corner, 4759. So this one's pretty good. This one here, loosen that slightly. That one. This one just a tiny bit. .4758. 4758. 4759. 4759. 4758. .4761 in the centre. 4759 here. 4762 there, so that's too loose. This might be slightly too tight. Let's try that. 4760. 4759. 4759. 4763. 4760. 4761. 4761. Well, I'm getting very close. I'll bring you back when I'm done. I'll tell you what the numbers look like. Well, it was all over within 30 seconds of me cutting the camera off, to tell the truth. The adjustment's good. They measure 47.60 millimeters at each 4 of the extremities there, and of course the same in the middle. So I'm quite happy that the lens to film distance is good, and now I can carry on with the rest of the job. And the rest of the job in this case is to clean up and fit the front rings, the control rings. And after that, what's left? Well, looking at the prism and cleaning that up's the next task after that. But first of all, let's get these front control rings in place, because that's the next thing to do. I mentioned earlier that it was unusual to see this post extending out the front of this plate here. It's like an alignment post, and I don't recall seeing that on a Reflex S before. In other ways, the shutter was fairly unremarkable. It didn't look any different than I would expect. But where I've seen that post extending through the front plate before was here. This is a Reflex 4, a much later camera. And you can see that that uses that same method with the extended post for that pinion. On the Reflex 4 it's quite a different shutter in its detail. One of the things it has is an extra screw in here to lock the shutter into the focus mount. And this one most certainly does not. And there's another change, something unusual and something I've seen nowhere else. Here is the front ring that holds everything together, and you'll see that this section in here is black. Now I think that's some special anti-friction coating that's been put in there, and I've seen that on no shutter of this type on any of the Kodak Reflex models. So it makes me wonder what this shutter was, how it got into the production run, and what the intention of the manufacturer was at the time. I suspect that it was a shutter that was intended for another purpose and had been put into the Kodak supplies, or it may have even been a prototype where they were testing certain design ideas. And certainly this extended post business only shows up on the Reflex 4 as far as I know in production, but they may have been experimenting with it earlier. This anti-friction coating, well, that's what I believe it to be. Certainly I've seen that nowhere, so I think that's an idea that didn't go into production. Anyway, I better assemble these components and get the control rings together. I'm just looking at this ring here now, and that's fairly unremarkable. This has been through the cleaner, so it's all clean. Right, get to it. Well, I'll start here by fitting the aperture ring on here. I have to stretch that out on the spring and get its tab engaged. Its tab shows through this slot here. That moves nice and freely. Let's make sure that spring's sitting correctly. That feels quite good. I'm just going to wipe some molybdenum paste down the inside of that spring where it contacts the aluminium there. See if it makes any difference to the feel of it. Nothing substantial. Alright, I won't bother doing that again. And this ring here has also been cleaned. So I'll just take the molybdenum paste, just wipe that around the outside surface, the inside surface, and all that piece there. And I'm not putting anything on there that you'd notice really. Put this in place. And align my marks. This brass tab should come up against that slot. The tab here that opens up the aperture on the camera lens just drops in here, this ring, and that should be round. Yeah, this is certainly where it differs from the standard Reflex S, because normally I would see a gap at this end and this would be sitting on about the third tooth. But with a gap at that end, it's sitting in about tooth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's certainly a 2-tooth difference in that rack. And I'm not sure how this is going to work, so I might just take that round to almost the beginning of the track at the third tooth on this pinion of the rack against the pinion and see how that behaves. I'm most interested to see if it opens the aperture fully, because that's where it would make a difference. Let's pop that to one side. Here's the shutter. The pinion sits on that shaft, as we've mentioned. And the shutter speed control ring is unusual on these shutters because it actually disengages from the shutter from the B setting back, which allows the settings ring to show exposures longer than B, longer than a second. Right, so I've just clipped that into place, making sure it engages with the tab here. So the shutter's set to B. My meter is set to ASA 10. I haven't disturbed the setting here. It should be setting correctly for that position. And I need to fit this piece in place. So I'm making sure I've got everything aligned there. I'm making sure that I've got this ring lined up with the third tooth. This is unusual because it's not how I would expect to find that shutter. Now that's not engaging correctly, or that's because of that post. It's making it awkward to get this in place. Okay, let's take that off again. Yes, that extended post makes it awkward to get this all sitting in correctly in place. Having said that, it's not easy on a good day, so it's just marginally more awkward than usual. Better. If this looks a bit awkward, it's because it is. Yeah, post is certainly the fly in the ointment here. Things are not quite seated. That's better. Yeah, the aperture's not set to f1.9 though. What's happening there? Yeah, it's certainly awkward to get that front ring off. The f1.9, it's there. Yeah, when I set it up pretty much at the beginning of the track, it's not where I'd normally expect it to be, so the position of that's important for how much it opens the aperture on the lens when you cock the shutter. Now in practice it's only critical for the f1.9 because as it goes around further it opens the lens up more. Well, all the other lenses are smaller apertures, they're fully open before you'd get to that stage. Okay, that looks like it's seated and settled. I'll get the screws in place. Now that screw I just put in place in this position is a longer screw. On later cameras, the 4 and the 3 I think, Reflex 4 and 3, they just had short screws in that position. One of these screw heads is a little bit damaged looking. I'll put that at the top because I can put a blob of red paint on there. It will be a more prominent alignment mark for setting the lens in place. I'll tighten those 3 screws up. And hopefully everything functions. Cocks. Shutter works. Shutter speeds, are they working? Yes, the detent works. The dials counter rotate at the end of this action there, so that's good. The meter's swinging through its range. I haven't set the meter, of course, the cord is not fixed to the drum at the top yet. That looks okay. I want to try the lens on there now and find out whether that lens actually opens up all the way. Let's have a look. That's not the one I want. Where have I put it? Here it is. we fit the lens, rotates, locks into position, check that the aperture, you can select f1.9, that's not a problem. And when I cock the shutter, I'm looking to see whether the aperture opens all the way. It doesn't. I notice that if I move my aperture setting lever, the ring at the bottom there, and I'm watching the aperture shift, basically somewhere between f1.9 and f2.8, that's as much as the aperture's been opened by the cocking action for viewing. Of course, unless you had it set to f1.9, in which case the full f1.9 aperture is visible. Would only make a difference for your focusing, basically, and make for a brighter image on the screen. That suggests that I'm about 1 tooth out with that curved rack, and I think I should attempt to deal with that. It may be that I can't get another tooth out of that it won't go, and this is it, but we'll find out. So I'll just remove these rings, and what I want is for this arm here to swing down further on the cocking stroke. You can see it's just about at the bottom of the rack, the groove there anyway. It may well be that I can't get that extra bit, but I'll find out. So I'll just return this to my start position, which was B at f1.9, so that I'll put everything back together in the same position, with the exception of this, which I want 1 tooth further down. See if I can remove those front rings together. So I would want that on or about where? Let's get these rings lined up correctly. I need it to swing down to the bottom of that piece, and that takes me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that puts that on that 5th tooth. Okay, let's see if I can get it together. I'll try once more. I don't know whether that made any difference at all. frame count is at number 1. No, I'm exactly where I was last time. So I think I need to move that to tooth number 6. And see if that does the job. I mean, this is just unusual because obviously the shutters are a bit of an oddity. Let's try moving that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I just didn't want to revolve smoothly there. Let me just check that. No, that's all right. I don't know if that can go to 6. That looks too big a gap to me. Yes, it is. It's not going to go. 5 it's going to be. That's not unprecedented on the Instamatic reflexes. In order to open the aperture up to f1.9 for viewing, instead of the something like f2.8, you actually had to make sure that the aperture was set to f1.9. That's not seated, now that's seated. I think we're going to call that good. Let's pop these screws back in. We're probably only quibbling about the difference between a viewing aperture of f2 and a viewing aperture of f1.9. In fact, nothing at all to speak of. Check the action of the shutter speeds and the aperture and the meter, everything's moving freely. Let's try the lens on there again, make sure everything works. Of course I haven't serviced the lens yet. That's fine, that'll do nicely. Let's pop that lens to one side. The camera body is fairly well advanced now. One thing I do have to do is I have to set the meter. Now the meter is, the cord's wrapped around the drum, but it's not pinned to the drum. The cord has to be trapped under the drum in order to hold its setting. So that will be my task, is to get that correct. Of course, any time you've got the top off the camera, there's always the ability to disturb the meter, for it to move, and you lose your tension on the cable, the cord, and then nothing is good. So I'm just going to go and check this against my calibrated light source. And see what it looks like back later. Well, unfortunately the selenium cell has lost sensitivity, and when it is set to be accurate at one light level, it is not accurate at a different light level. That's not something you can easily overcome. Basically, there are no new selenium cells for 60-year-old cameras. So I will set this so that it displays accurately at that particular light level, which basically corresponds to cloudy bright. And the owner will just have to make do with a handheld meter or the Sunny 16 rule if they want accurate exposures for any other conditions than that. Now what I have to achieve, let's just take that shutter release button off so it doesn't fall off and make me jump. The cord here, I need to lift this lower cord up over the top, and the upper cord I have to get into the slot. There's a couple of notches there, I need to get it to run down under there. I have to achieve this without getting the meter falling off the camera. It's always a bit tricky. Pointed tweezers and a pin in order to get under there and pull the cord up is what I need.